Señor ministro, por su intervención. A continuación, le damos la palabra al director ejecutivo de ANDEG, doctor Alejandro Castañeda, quien dará inicio oficial al 7mo Foro Energético ANDEG, retos y oportunidades en la transformación energética.
Buenos días para todos. En primer lugar, agradecerles por estar participando hoy en este 7mo foro, denominado Retos y Oportunidades en la Transición Energética. Queremos agradecerles el hacer el esfuerzo de estar hoy en día conectados en esta nueva forma de hacer este foro. La primera vez que lo hacemos de forma virtual y esperamos pues que el día de hoy sea muy provechoso para todos los participantes y asistentes, y pues esperamos obviamente que el próximo año ya podamos volver a vernos y poder, como dijo el presidente de la Junta Directiva, tomarnos un café y compartir en persona los diferentes temas de coyuntura y actualidad en el sector minero energético y en particular el sector eléctrico. Agradecerle muy especialmente a los patrocinadores que confiaron en ANDEG en esta oportunidad para hacer este foro de forma virtual, a todos los asistentes, al ministro por estas palabras de la transformación que el sector espera en los próximos años, al presidente de la Junta Directiva, el doctor Luis Miguel Fernández, por esas palabras de apertura, a los honorables congresistas que están conectados en la mañana de hoy al evento, agradecerles por la gestión que han tenido con ANDEC y obviamente la gestión que realizan, que ha sido tan importante desde el legislativo. Agradecerle también a los funcionarios de gobierno, del Ministerio de Minas y Energía, de la Superintendencia de Servicios Públicos, de la Comisión de Regulación de Energía y Gas, a todos los funcionarios de gobierno que se conectan hasta ahora y en general a todas las personas que están conectadas hoy en día, a los participantes de las empresas y demás, muy agradecidos porque estén hoy en día acompañándonos. Entonces, simplemente desearles que sea una mañana provechosa, que puedan sacar lo mejor de esas conferencias, que como se ha caracterizado siempre ANDEC, esto es un foro que queremos hacerlo siempre con unos altos estándares desde el punto de vista técnico y desde el punto de vista de generar ideas para el sector eléctrico y energético en Colombia. Entonces, nuevamente agradecerles a todos ustedes. Muchas gracias.
Gracias, doctor Alejandro Castañeda, por su intervención. A continuación, los invitamos a refrescar la página. Damos inicio a nuestra agenda académica. Durante el desarrollo de cada uno de los paneles, los invitamos a hacernos llegar sus preguntas, las preguntas que tengan por el chat habilitado en la plataforma, junto con un correo electrónico para dar respuesta. Iniciamos con el saludo del señor Fatih Birol, director ejecutivo de IEA, Agencia Internacional de Energía. Fatih Birol es ingeniero eléctrico y doctorado en Economía de la Energía de la Universidad Técnica de Viena. Tras trabajar 6 años en la OPEP, se unió a IEA en el año de 1995, donde trabaja actualmente. El señor Birol ha recibido numerosos premios que reconocen su labor. Recibimos con un cordial saludo al señor Fatih Birol.
Okay, greetings from Paris, from
Muy
International.
bien, saludos desde París, desde la Agencia Internacional Energética. Es un gran placer poder reunirnos con nuestros colegas colombianos. Estuve escuchando hace unos minutos al ministro Mesa y estoy agradecido por el apoyo que hemos recibido con nuestros compañeros. Tenemos aquí el subdirector Dave Church. Ahora, estamos pasando por una crisis importante. Ha sido un año bastante gris, 2020. ¿Cómo podemos salir y recuperarnos de este año? ¿Qué tipo de recuperación vamos a tener en el mundo? Hay grandes implicaciones para la energía y también para el clima en los años que vienen. Por esta razón, hace solamente 3 meses,
Together with IMF, International Monetary Fund, prepare a sustainable recovery plan. How we can see economic recovery while at the same time have a sustainable energy future. We will tell you a bit our thoughts about that, but I can tell you in advance that when I hear the presentation of Minister Mesa, it is very much in line with what we, IE and IMF, suggest to countries around the world. So what I thought, some of you may not be very familiar with the IEA, our organization. A few things about us, International Energy Agency. We are an organization based in Paris, about 330 top energy experts around the world working on energy issues. We work on all energy, from solar to nuclear, from gas to coal, from wind to oil. We cover all energy sources and all technologies. Energy security, climate change are very important topics for us. IEA is known to be the global energy authority on energy issues. We have been founded several years ago, and the main idea at that time was to address the energy security only, but we have widened our portfolio, especially after 2015, when we had a modernization strategy focusing on bringing many emerging countries around the world under the IEA family umbrella, and as well as pushing clean energy technologies very strongly. And when it comes to Latin America, we are strongly developing our relationship with Latin America. OLADE is, of course, our sister organization. Very soon, we are organizing a Latin American Minister Roundtable with OLADE, where I hope Minister Mesa will be able to join. Recently, 1.5 years ago, Mexico joined the IEA as our 30th member country. Brazil is an association member country since a long time. Chile is also on the pathway to membership. Colombia, as I have been discussing with Minister Mesa, exploring its interest to be a full member of the IEA. I am very much looking forward to work with Minister Mesa and our Colombian colleagues. And I can tell you that we are impressed with the recent achievements in Colombian energy sector, especially the renewable auctions. It's how they are designed, and the results are a good source of inspiration to many countries around the world. The great opportunity of growing renewables, especially when they are coupled with the natural gas coming from offshore or unconventional gas, would also make sure that the energy system not only sustainable but also secure. So in that respect, we are happy to work with Colombia, with the sharing the experience with the other governments we have with Colombia. And at the same time, as Minister Mesa knows well, I am the chair of the Davos World Economic Forum Energy Board. We work with the several energy companies very closely, and we will be very happy to share the private sector experiences also together with our Colombian colleagues. So I would like to thank once again for this opportunity. And I don't know if Minister Mesa is listening us now. If he is listening, I would like to thank him also personally, because just a person, not Radamel Falcao, who plays in my football team, scored 2 beautiful goals last weekend and one wonderful assist. So thank you very much, Mr. Mesa. What you have promised came to be true. I wish you all the best in this meeting. Now, I turn the floor to my colleague, Mr. Dave Turk, who is our Deputy Executive Director acting. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Fatih. And let me just say what it's a pleasure, how much of a pleasure it is to join you all, Minister Mesa, Mr. Fernandez Zahir, Mr. Castañeda Cuervo, and ladies and gentlemen. It's a particular personal pleasure, as I had the honor of actually being born in South America and being raised there for the first years of my life. So anytime I get a chance to do anything with a Latin American country, especially one that's doing such terrific work as Dr. Birol said, in Colombia, it's a real personal pleasure. So let me get on to the substance of the Sustainable Recovery Plan that Fatih mentioned. Let me first offer a little bit of context just to set the table. Much of this, of course, is known. We're all feeling this. COVID-19 is creating the largest economic crisis since the Great Depression. Global GDP expected to decline by at least 6% in 2020. That's happening all around the world. Colombia, unfortunately, has not been spared, reporting a total of 736,377 cases of COVID-19 and a strong impact on economic growth. Instead of growing by more than 3% in 2020, as was expected and hoped for, now expected to shrink by 2.4%. That is a big, big change and big difference. Secondly, 300 million jobs are at risk across the economy. And as we'll get to in a minute, we've done an analysis looking at the energy sector around the world, and we see 6 million jobs in the energy sector. That is a lot of jobs around the world and a political imperative for all governments to address. Third, global CO2 emissions are set to fall by around 8% in 2020. That's actually taking us all the way back to the global emissions in 2010. So we're wiping away 10 years of emissions with that 8% drop. Unfortunately, that's coming on the back of slowed economic times in countries, recessions in countries, job loss in countries. It's not putting us on that sustainable structural change that we need to get to our climate goals and to achieve our other sustainability goals as well. And as we'll get to in a minute, recoveries from previous global economic crises, including from 2009, saw a huge increase in emissions coming after those recessions. That's something we, of course, need to avoid. Fourth, the immediate focus of governments rightfully has been on healthcare, financial interventions to avert as much of the economic meltdown as possible. So far, we've not seen energy sectors featured as prominently in spending plans to date, as certainly we from the International Energy Agency would like to see. But what you see there in the fifth bullet, the magnitude of this crisis, the lessons learned, and we've looked at the previous recessions and really tried to analyze them for lessons learned. And the current trajectory, the imperative of really putting our CO2 emissions in a much different trajectory going forward. We think there's a very strong, a very compelling case for the energy sector, as Minister Mesa was describing in Colombia, to play a central part in plans, not only in Colombia, but around the world. So as Dr. Birol mentioned, we worked with the IMF. We put together a bottom-up assessment looking at different energy measures, looking at economic analysis, including coordinating with the International Monetary Fund to put together what we're calling our Sustainable Recovery Plan that creates jobs, boosts economic growth, and improves sustainability and resilience. So let me just go into what that entails. First, we have to acknowledge very clearly we're working in the real world. And if you want anything to get done in the real world, you have to understand what's moving governments, what people are demanding of their governments. And certainly boosting the economy. That's a political imperative in all countries around the world. Secondly, and very much related, is creating jobs, dealing with those job losses, looking to return as many of those jobs as possible and new jobs into the system, the political imperative around the world, in Colombia, but around the world as well. And what our plan does is boost the economy, create jobs, and improves energy resilience and sustainability. All three of these tied together. Now there is a cost to this. It's $1 trillion for 3 years, each of 3 years. That is a significant amount of financial investment, but that's 0.7% of global GDP today. That is not that much money for all the benefits that we get for this kind of investment. And I'll go into those benefits in a minute. You hear about the sums of money being considered in even one country or two countries or several countries. You think of the amount of funding in the US context where I come from in terms of stimulus programs already dwarfing that 1 trillion amount. So a modest amount of investment if you think of it in the big picture. And we looked at 6 different sectors focused on where these interventions could come from the energy side to, again, boost economies, promote jobs, and put our energy systems in a more resilient, sustainable pathway for the future. First is low carbon electricity sources, new wind, new solar, expansion and modernization of electricity grids. One thing that's very different this recession from where our recession was 10 years ago and the Great Recession in 2009, 2010 time period are the huge cost reductions we've seen in solar, in wind, other renewables technologies. That is a major, major difference and a note of optimism this time around. Here I'd like to, just as Dr. Birol did, really commend the government of Colombia for its successful two-way auctions for renewable energy. Again, an inspiration for other countries around the world. And we're always looking for these success stories, these great examples to share with the global community. So congratulations to Colombia on that. A second area of focus, transport, EVs, and rail in particular. And again, congratulations. Minister Mesa was just sharing some of the EV numbers in Colombia, a real regional leader, Colombia, on the EV side of things. So congratulations again there. A third area, efficiency, buildings and appliances. Huge amounts of opportunities for jobs, emission reductions. Fourth, industrial efficiency. In fact, if you put the efficiency pieces together, our executive director, Dr. Birol, has called this a jobs machine. It is a jobs machine in the best of circumstances. We're now not in the best of circumstances, even more important efficiency to tap into that for the jobs component of it. Fifth category, production and use of fuels in a more sustainable way, reducing methane emissions in particular, but other interventions as well. And then sixth, innovation, investing in those technologies we need now and in the near term, but in the future as well, especially to get to deep decarbonization, to hydrogen, to batteries, to CCUS, to small and modular nuclear reactors as well. So let's go into some of the benefits that we get from that 1 trillion of additional investment in the Sustainable Recovery Plan. Let's first look at economic growth. Here's what we get over the next 3 years of this plan, 2021, 2022, 2023. For that 1 trillion of investment, we get 1.1% GDP growth additionally each year. That is a significant amount of additional GDP growth just coming from investment in the energy sector with this relatively modest amount of investment. So huge amounts of GDP growth. Even more GDP growth in emerging economies. So if the global average is 1.1%, in emerging economies, you get 1.3% of additional benefits. Advanced economies, a little less benefits, but still very significant GDP growth from the Sustainable Recovery Plan. Now let's look at jobs. That is a political imperative, rightfully so, in governments around the world. Let's look a little bit more, both in 2020, here's the 6 million jobs that have been lost in the energy sector around the world. Significant amounts of reduction. Under the Sustainable Recovery Plan, we get significant increases in jobs. You see in 2021, 2022, and 2023, 9 million new jobs each of those years. You see the focus areas, efficiency, electricity, and remember again, efficiency as the jobs machine, electricity and grids, incredibly important areas, and other areas as well. Here's a bit more of a breakdown in terms of the particular categories within efficiency, within the renewables and electricity. Buildings efficiency, huge amount of opportunity, solar, wind, electric vehicles, emerging technologies as well. So huge job opportunities in the energy space. If governments, again, make the smart decisions, make the investments working with other international partners going forward. Let's just focus on grids for a minute here. Investments in solar, investments in wind, investments in other renewables. We also need modern grids. We need modern grids to incorporate those variable renewables, those intermittent renewables, to make grids as resilient as they possibly can. We've seen around the world how important electricity is for all of us. We couldn't be doing this video conference without electricity and the digital tools that are powered by electricity. Important for healthcare, important for jobs, important for remote learning that a lot of our kids are now undertaking. So electricity is important now, will be even more important in the future, and we need to prepare our grids. We need to make them more resilient, prepare for future crises, natural crises, other kinds of crises as well. And so what you see in the plan here is a significant increase, 40% additional investment in electricity grids that we're recommending based off of the baseline. And if you look at those bars from 2015 to 2020, we saw some steady years, but then we saw some decreasing years in 2019 and 2020. We have to not only reverse that trend of going down, but this is an opportunity with the stimulus packages, with the economic recovery, to put the amount of investment in grids, not only for the next 3 years, but to really build those grids of the future that are necessary into the future to get us to our sustainable recovery, our sustainable development goals. Now let's look at the overall CO2 picture. Carbon dioxide, GHG emissions, greenhouse gas emissions from the energy sector. We'll go back to 2005. And what you see here, these are global numbers, significant increases in 2005, 2006, 2007, 2008. And then we saw a decrease. This is the Great Recession, as I referred to earlier. What happened, unfortunately, coming out of that Great Recession was some countries stepped up to the plate, made some investments in sustainability, made some investments in renewables and efficiency, but not enough countries, not enough policymakers, decision makers, private sector leaders stepped up to the plate to really channel those resources to structurally change our energy. And what we saw was the greatest increase in emissions ever in human history. You see that steep increase coming in 2010, 2011, and 2012. Here we have an even greater recession, 6 times greater recession, economic downturn in 2020 time period. And what we really face is a choice collectively around the world, decision makers around the world. Without sustained policy intervention, without the kinds of smart policies that we've identified in our IEA Sustainable Recovery Plan. And again, congratulations for Minister Mesa, Colombia identifying some of these terrific opportunities. But without that kind of leadership, without that kind of decision making around the world by every government, what we're set to do is to increase our emissions again, just like in 2010, 2011, and 2012. You see that without a sustainable recovery, that brown band going up, emissions going up, not definitively peaking in emissions, but increasing emissions going forward. The opportunity in front of us is to do something different, to do a sustainable recovery plan, again, in governments around the world. And then we get a chance to have a definitive peak in global emissions in 2009 or 2019, and to put our economy, our energy economy, on path to achieve the kinds of goals we've set out for ourselves in the Paris Agreement, in the Sustainable Development Goals, reducing air pollution and providing energy access around the world as well. This is not only doable, it's achievable, it's affordable, but it's not going to happen on its own. It requires strong leadership around the world and day in and day out efforts. In the next 2-3 year period of time, with these investments, with the historic investments being made by governments around the world, other important actors,
Estas impresiones de otros
investors,
gobiernos
private
alrededor del mundo y
investors,
otros
IMF, the World Bank,
inversionistas
regional
privados,
development
como
banks.
por ejemplo
Without those kinds of
el
smart,
Banco Mundial y
dedicated
demás,
leadership, day in and day out, will be on the brown band, but we do have an opportunity to get to that green band. And this is our opportunity to set things right. This really is a once in a generation opportunity. So with that, let me just hit a few conclusions. Governments are set to make these decisions that will shape energy infrastructure industry for decades to come. We've done a lot of investment on the lock-in effect. That is infrastructure that has been built, that will be built, that locks in emissions, locks in a future, not only for the next 5 years, 10 years, but because of a lot of the investments in power plants, other infrastructure and energy lasting decades. Decisions made now will last with us for decades to come. Implementing the Sustainable Recovery Plan can achieve those significant outcomes, achieve those political imperatives. Boosting economic growth 1.1% per year, creating 9 million jobs a year, and making 2019 the definitive peak in global emissions and putting us in a structural decline that we need to get to. Direct government expenditure, less than 10% of recovery plans announced to date, but crucial for governments to create the right conditions. It's not just the direct government investment, it's the policy structure, it's the incentives, it's the regulations as well to materialize this 1 trillion a year for 3 years. Government funding, private sector investment as well. Just a point about the priority that we're making on clean energy transitions. You heard Dr. Birol at the outset say part of the modernization plan was for the IA to become the global hub for clean energy. This really manifests itself in a meeting we had just a few months ago, virtually, this IEA Clean Energy Transition Summit. Again, thank you for Colombia's participation in that. We had 40 ministers, 80% of global energy consumption at this meeting, focused on how we take advantage of this historic opportunity. The challenges, no doubt, but the opportunity in front of us. This is a top priority for the IEA. And as Dr. Birol mentioned, Colombia is a top priority for the IEA as well. We very much welcome all the partnership to date. We look forward to working with Colombia on its sustainable and resilient recovery, and certainly in the context of the impressive mission transformation efforts as well. So we look forward to strengthening that partnership even going forward. And Dr. Birol, myself, all of us here at the IEA look very, very much forward to seeing how we can help going forward. Again, thank you for having the IEA participate and be part of this event. And don't hesitate to let us know whatever we can do to help going forward. Thank you.